Absolutely. Moving away from there, looking at some of the news from last week, the Eubank Jr. versus Benn undercard is now official. We've seen some great matchups on there. What do you make of the whole undercard
Let me
first?
get it. I've just got it written down here. Just one sec.
No worries.
I've got it here. Well, as I said, spoke to Anthony Yard at the weekend. Obviously, he's having a trilogy fight with Lyndon Arthur. Um, we'd like to see him in with Joshua Buatsi, obviously, but he's lined up for that February 22nd card. I don't know whether there's politics going on there. Anthony Yard went into the fact that he believed that he was going to be fighting Joshua Buatsi next. Um, there's a banana skin there for that to happen with. I don't want to call Callum Smith a banana skin. The former world number one at super middleweight could upset the apple cart there. If Callum's on his game, that's a very tough fight to call. I see Buatsi as the marginal favourite, but it's a very tough fight to call. In a way, Anthony Yard said he's still carping from that first defeat to Lyndon Arthur, still annoyed about it, and he's going to go in there and produce another aggressive performance. I like that fight. It's great to see Liam Smith back. What's he got left? Billum Smith and Brandon Glanton, Vidal Riley and Chevin Clark. I really like that. I like that fight. It's not, and it doesn't overwhelm, but it's going to be a great occasion. It's going to be a great build-up. We comparing everything to the Feb 22 card at the moment, I think. But it'll be a great occasion on April the 26th at Spurs. I think there'll be 60,000 in there. And I think all the guys will raise their game. Chris Billum Smith, I don't know where, it's, maybe it's I don't know where it gets him. Glanton is 11 with the IBF, so it's a fight for him that he's maybe treading water in some ways.
Outside of the main event, which fight do you think has the potential to steal the show the most?
Riley and Chevin Clark for me is the one that really kind of whets the appetite, because we know that Chev is a big heavy hitter and that's what he likes to do. Vidal Riley has been frozen out of the game in some ways against that group of British cruiserweights that we'd like to have seen him in with. Obviously, it was going to be Isaac Chamberlain, and perhaps we know now why that was cancelled, that he got the opportunity on this card potentially. I don't know if it is that or not, but yeah, that's the one that entices me. And if it is the opener on the night, then brilliant. I don't think it will be. I think it'll be further up the card, but it's good that it's announced. I'm so glad the fight is on and the event is on, because I really do think it will be an event. I still fancy Benn to be dangerous early on and Eubank to win on points in this fight. I just think he's too big, but we shall see as the weeks progress.
What do you make of the report from the Times saying that Sky reportedly anxious about showing Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn?
What, because of Benn's clomiphene tests? That's what it was reported as. I don't see that. I mean, I see that as not really making sense, because they've shown. I thought the reason given was that he had those positive tests, and it hadn't been transparently explained. I see that as not really aligning with fighters in the past. I just didn't get it. I didn't get it as a story. And I also think that given that the fight was underwritten and signed and taken over the line in the end by Turki Al Sheikh, that it's a DAZN special in lots of ways. No, it's going to do massive numbers in my view. I think it might well do 1 million pay-per-views by the time they sell it and hype it as they will, and get the fathers involved and look back in time. As we spoke about last week, we looked at the rich history of the family feud, or the feuding families. Um, yeah, I thought it was an odd story. I thought it was an odd line. And I've never seen Sky take a decision on fighters who've been banned in the past or suspended in the past coming back and fighting and then not showing their fights. I don't recall that they've done that ever before.
Who do you think who do you think faces the bigger challenge going into fight? Do you think Eubank Jr. draining himself down to 160 with the rehydration clause, or Conor Benn going up 2 weight divisions to 160 pounds?
Well, he's got £10 to put back on in the following 24 hours. I think Frank Smith, I think you spoke to him about this. He did a very good job of explaining that it's probably it's a tough weight cut for Chris, but £10 is a lot of weight to put back on anyway. It's not like, I think the last time they were due to fight, or the first time they were due to fight when it was cancelled, I think he was having to make 157, and then he had £6 or £7 he was allowed to put
Yeah, I
on.
think it was 164. I want to
Yeah,
say
so
he was allowed
seven
to bring it up
pounds.
the next
So
day.
he's got better options this time. Yes, he's 2.5 years older. Yes, he's been stopped by Liam Smith. Um, but the I think there's been a bit of an exaggeration about how difficult it may be for him. Um, that it's unfair, but I think he's happy with it. Um, the tougher fight, the tougher fight is definitely for Ben. Yes, he's fresher, but he's a much smaller man. He's coming up the weight divisions, um, and he's been fairly inactive for 2.5 years. So I think it's a tougher fight for him, and that's why he's got to go for it early on in the fight. It's going to be an amazing spectacle, but I do think Eubank's fought at the higher level as well. People love to write Eubank off, but you look at some of his performances, even at super middleweight, where he's probably produced his best performances at super middleweight. Um, no, I think he'll be fine, and I think, look, there any story around these two gets exaggerated because of the drama and because of the things that have happened in the last 2.5 years, the things they've called each other. They've if we recall, Chris Eubank Jr. had originally, in spite of the clomiphene tests, agreed to go ahead with the fight in the background, but he's had second thoughts about that, and he's expressed it in recent times. But it's going to be a big spectacle. I think I said to you earlier on in the year, the start of the year, if we get this fight, if we get Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury, if we get some of the other big fights that are going to take place this year, if we get Nick Ball against Naoya Inoue, I know you'll come on to that. We're sailing with British boxing at the moment. It's an amazing time to be involved in the sport in this country.
You mentioned people exaggerating a lot around the Ben Eubank fight. Speaking to Frank Smith last week, he said that Conor Benn's always going to be seen as the devil in the public's eyes, and that's why such a fuss has been made over this rehydration clause. How do you react to that statement?
What you mean that Conor Benn's seen as the heel, as the villain in this
Mm.
contest? Well, for
Just
once, it's normally Chris Eubank Jr. who's the Bond villain in his matchups. For once, he can sit back and play the cool guy, while Conor Benn, plays the heel in this. I think that's what you're aiming at, yeah.
mm.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's the older, more wizened fighter. He's the one with more to lose. Um, if Eubank wins, it'll be "I told you so" moment. Weight divisions for a reason. He's too big. Conor Benn hasn't fought at world level yet and hasn't proved himself, so we should have expected that outcome. So it's all to prove for Conor Benn, but he's up to that. kind of challenge. I saw him saying this week, well, he was being interviewed this week, and he was saying that he'd rather earn the money than win the world title at the moment. And I get it, because he's lost, what is he, 28 now? He's lost 2.5 years of his boxing life. Yes, he fought twice under a Texas license, but he's lost a lot of time in his career, some of the best years of his career. So he's making up for lost time. I think he revealed he spent £1 million on defending himself in court.
Another thing that was mentioned when speaking to Frank Smith last week was I asked about the rehydration clause, and he said that it's a term that is just overused, and it realistically it's just a second day weigh-in. Obviously, the IBF have that mandatory process of the second day weigh-in for all their title fights. What do you make of that, and Frank Smith defending the rehydration clause?
Well, I think again, it's how you spin it, the semantics of how you spin what is rehydration, or what is weight gain afterwards, or what is kind of getting your body back to normal. I think, as he said, there's nothing unusual about this, apart from the fact that he is a much bigger man, and they didn't want to give him the opportunity to come in at 185 pounds, 190 pounds, or whatever he might have weighed. Probably not as much as that, but they needed to draw the line somewhere. They've taken the IBF rule, haven't they? I think he was just, look. What you've got to remember with Frank Smith is, even though he's promoting Conor Benn, Chris Eubank Jr. is his brother-in-law. So, and people forget that obviously he's with Emily, Chris's sister, and there's a family tie there. And in many ways, I don't think he is distant from Chris. He's someone that will be speaking to Chris, will be around Chris, will have a relationship with Chris. So I think he did right by swinging it back the other way and saying, look, this is nothing unusual for Chris Eubank to do. There are weight cuts and rehydration clauses involved in a lot of boxing matches. And I think he was trying to suggest it had been taken out of context and just dropped in as a headline, and was being hyped that Chris Eubank Jr. was being told he couldn't go above a certain weight and it would impact on his performance. We know what father will say. I'm worried for my son, as he will always say. So we await the reaction of Senior once he's on board and involved in it all. I hope the fathers are at the press conference, which I believe is going to happen in a couple of weeks' time, or within a couple of weeks.